Dylan Dreyer's emotional return unfolded not with the fanfare of a studio countdown or the familiar glow of camera lights, but in the quiet spaces she inhabited after stepping away from the show that had long shaped her public rhythm. A return not just to work, but to herself, stitched together from moments the audience never saw and stories she never felt the need to explain aloud. In the months after her departure, mornings no longer began with makeup chairs and weather maps, but with the soft chaos of home, the slow clatter of breakfast, the weight of reflection that comes when applause fades and a person is left alone with who they were before the world learned their name. And it was in that stillness that Dylan discovered how deeply her identity had been intertwined with the role she played on screen. Cheerful, composed, endlessly prepared, even on days when life behind the scenes felt anything but predictable. She carried with her the echoes of deadlines met, storms tracked, smiles held steady through personal uncertainty. And yet there was also a quiet grief for the version of herself that had been defined by constant visibility, by being needed every hour of the broadcast day, by knowing that millions trusted her voice to tell them what kind of day lay ahead. Her post-show life became an unspoken journey of recalibration, where emotions surfaced not dramatically but gradually, in fleeting thoughts during long walks, in the pause before answering the question, "What's next?" in the realization that stepping back was not a failure or an ending, but a necessary exhale after years of holding everything together. She missed the team, the shared glances before going live, the unspoken understanding that comes from working under pressure. Yet she also felt a new tenderness toward herself, an allowance to be tired, uncertain, and quietly hopeful without having to translate those feelings into something consumable. When the idea of returning began to take shape, it wasn't driven by ratings or obligation, but by a deeper sense of readiness, a feeling that she had traveled far enough inward to come back outward with more honesty than before, carrying lessons learned in absence, how strength can look like rest, how ambition can coexist with presence, how a life doesn't lose value when it steps out of the spotlight. Her emotional return was layered with gratitude, not just for the platform she once stood on, but for the distance that reminded her why she loved the work in the first place, why storytelling mattered to her beyond forecasts and scripts, why connecting with people felt meaningful only when she was also connected to herself. There was no grand speech announcing her journey, no detailed explanation of what those months had held, because some transformations resist neat summaries, living instead in the softened edges of perspective, in the way she listened more than she spoke, in the way her smile carried less performance and more truth. Viewers who watched her return sensed something different, a quiet depth beneath the familiar warmth, as if she had weathered a storm of her own and emerged not unscarred, but steadier, more grounded, aware that life continues to unfold whether or not cameras are rolling. Dylan's post-show chapter was never about disappearing, but about redefining presence, about learning that stepping away can be an act of courage, that returning can be an act of trust, and that the most meaningful journeys are often the ones we don't narrate, the ones that happen in silence, shaping who we become long before we ever step back into view.